What are you gonna do with your life? If you're anything like me, you're probably sick of being asked that question. Like, I'm married to 4 kids and I'm still being asked it.
For some people though, their answers are on the tip of their tongues. I'm gonna be a doctor. I'm gonna be a marine biologist. I'm gonna be a pilot. For me, explaining what I do often causes an interesting reaction. I talk to people about God and faith. Now sometimes I love this because it opens up a conversation about what we believe, and other times I dread it because I'm afraid of being labelled a fanatic or a holy Joe.
The arguments made against the existence of God are everywhere. Books, websites, and all sorts of people can be quite vocal about it. I want to present the other side of the story and start an honest conversation about questions of faith and belief that we all struggle with. So let's start with a question. How did we get here? Or better yet, how did all this get here? Did someone or something create all of this, or did it start by itself? Is it possible that the universe has always just been here, with no start and with no end? These questions have been puzzling philosophers and challenging scientists for thousands of years. Take Plato. He was one of the most influential thinkers in history. He argued that if you see something moving, then something must have moved it, and that if you traced every movement back in time, you would find the source of all movement. Say you're at home, looking at your window, and you see a ball come flying towards you. Do you assume that the ball has just always been in motion, just bouncing around the cosmos? Or worse, the ball comes crashing through your window. Will your first thought be, wow, I guess the ball was just always moving? No, that would be mad. You're more likely to think about the cause behind what's just happened. Or suppose you find something unexpected in your room. You don't think, I never noticed this before. You think, how did this get here? It's part of our curious human nature. The question of how always leads to the question of who. Who left this in my room? Who broke my window? Let's consider a much bigger ball in motion, like our planet. Our beautiful green and blue rock travels through space at 67,000 miles per hour, rotating at 1,000 miles per hour. So here's the question. What or who kicked this off? What keeps it going? The Bible opens with these 3 words, in the beginning. 3 simple words loaded with meaning. It's a statement that our universe had a beginning. But does this line up with what scientists have discovered about why our universe came to be? Early in the 1900s, Edwin Hubble, of telescope fame, contributed greatly to the scientific theory of an expanding universe. Hubble argued that not only is the universe expanding, but that it sprang into being from a single point in the finite past. Scientists used to assume that the universe had always just existed. Scientists like Hubble now show us that the universe had an initiation event or starting point. My point, though, is that if the universe had a beginning, it's fair to suggest that something caused it, and that this powerful creative force must be beyond the universe itself. For me, it seems that both science and faith recognize the possibility of this powerful creative force. If this force is God, it might go a long way to explaining why we're here and how we're even able to have this conversation. People often assume that science and faith don't mix, that you have to choose between the two. Or someone might say, this faith stuff is interesting, but I'm more of a science person. I don't think it needs to be as black and white as that. As in, I know loads of people that are really passionate about their science, but they believe in God. And I also know that having a faith doesn't mean that you have to ignore science. In fact, many important theories and discoveries about the universe have come from people of faith. Take Blaise Pascal, Isaac Newton, and Robert Boyle, just to name a few.
While people debate the differences between science and faith, most would acknowledge that they attempt to understand the universe. Science can help us to understand the how and the when, while faith can help us to explore the who and the why. The more we delve into science, the more we discover how incredible and how unlikely that life exists at all. Take the English physicist Paul Davies. He says that the laws of physics seem to be the product of an exceedingly ingenious design.
In other words, from the vast solar system that surrounds us to the ridiculously complex cells that make up our bodies, there seems to be this specific design and purpose that keeps what could and should be absolute chaos in working order. Imagine the biggest sound desk you have ever seen, like one you would see at a concert. Or to be more exact, imagine a room packed with sound desks. We're talking about hundreds and hundreds of dials, buttons and sliders. A universe where the potential of life exists would require every dial, every button and every slider to be in an exact position. Let's imagine that slider 1 controls the Earth's distance from the Sun. One nudge closer and the planet would burn up. A nudge further away and the whole planet would freeze. A minimal change in gravity would pull us into the Sun or spin us out into darkness. Turn down the oxygen even slightly and life just ceases. The American scientist Francis Collins explains that there are 15 constants in the universe, things like gravity, the speed of light and the boiling point of water. Each of these constants has precise values, and if one of these constants is out by even 0.000001, not only will the universe not be able to sustain human life, but there might not even be stars or planets. The beauty is that our world is sustained by a very delicate balance. Just one change would trigger a catastrophic event, ending all of human life. The theoretical physicist and atheist Stephen Hawking once said that the odds against a universe like ours emerging out of something like the Big Bang are enormous. He said it would be difficult to explain why the universe would have begun in just this way, except as the act of a God who intended to create beings like us. That's a significant statement from a once-in-a-generation kind of genius. But to be fair to Hawking, although he recognizes God as a possible answer to understanding the complexity of the universe, he is working alongside other incredible scientific minds to offer alternative explanations. But for me, I find myself simply amazed at what it requires for even the universe to just exist. And as I look at the beauty around me, it reminds me of a line in the Bible by the Apostle Paul. He said, "For ever since the world was created, people have seen the earth and sky. Through everything God made, they can clearly see his invisible qualities, his eternal power and divine nature." Now, of course, it is possible that our existence is down to chance or probability, but it's as unlikely as a monkey typing on a typewriter and eventually producing one of Shakespeare's sonnets. So we have to come to one of two conclusions. Either we exist as a result of mind-boggling chance or breathtaking design.
We've looked through the telescope and the microscope at arguments for the existence of God. And as interesting or compelling as they might be, they are out there arguments. To do this conversation justice, we also need to look at the in here. Like, we all have this shared sense that this life matters. We'll say something like, "Don't waste your life." But the only thing that can be wasted is something precious or something valuable. Or in moments of great joy and satisfaction, we'll say something like, "I just feel like I was put on this earth for this specific reason," or "I just feel like I was meant to do this." Are we delusional? Is this just how we make sense of a senseless world? And apparently we're the only ones on this earth that are asking the question, what does this life mean? If there is no God, then although this place is beautiful, even we are beautiful, we are just an accidental arrangement of atoms. Although it might seem cold and it might seem harsh, but take God out of the equation and there's no defined purpose for which we are made. Now, this is not to say that we can't make a purpose for the here or now or even for our lives, but where does the impulse to create and discover meaning come from?
Think about the stories that take our breath away. Are they not just merely words and themes designed to provoke a reaction in the brain, driving us to believe we can create a better world? What about love? In a world without design or intention, love is simply a biochemical response. But if life is just chemistry or biology, then why, when we sit at a hospital bed beside the one we love, is the sound of the heart monitor the most important sound in the world? Why does each beep matter?
When tragedy hits us, from the death of a loved one or even a really bad breakup, we'll say that we're brokenhearted. But what does that mean? Our hearts are still beating fine. The problem is with something else we call our hearts, that center of ourselves, that place which is our innermost being. It's in this place where we feel the deepest pain of those we have lost, and the absence of what we truly long and desire for. But why do we have these longings and desires? How would we explain them? On the one hand, we have physical longings, like hunger. Like right now, I long for a chocolate cone with vanilla ice cream. And just because I long for it doesn't necessarily mean that I'll get it. But is it not true that my appetite for food means that food exists? And on the other hand, we have longings and desires that go much deeper, emotionally and spiritually. Like we'll have a picture in our head of what our future could be, or we long to be part of something bigger than ourselves, or we might have a desire to do something with our life that makes a lasting impact. Is our hope for something truer, deeper, more fulfilling a clue to the existence of something else or someone else? C.S. Lewis, the author of the Chronicles of Narnia, once said, "If I find in myself desires which nothing in this world can satisfy, the only logical explanation is that I was made for another world." The writings in the Bible explain that this other world is heaven, and that this someone else is God, and that we're made in God's image. Now, I'm not talking about my arms or my legs, or even the weird mole I have on my back. No, I'm talking about my consciousness, my nature, my capacity not just to survive, but to create, to love, to imagine, that all these things reflect the God who created me. And maybe you could argue that everything that defines us, like love, joy, romance, imagination, creativity, that all these things are just a chemical reaction. But how extraordinary is it that a universe would come from nothing and produce the impossible yet ideal conditions for life to exist, that humans would form as a result, and look at themselves and others and say that this improbability means nothing, because we live like it means everything.